Hello mouses! Any artist that's been on the internet for more than 5 minutes has come across one of their adverts that requests work for exposure but no payment. Now all the good advice says stay away from jobs like this, but people keep asking and people keep accepting, so I thought it was about time that I did a video on what to watch out for when you're working as a freelancer. First of all, never work for free. Now that might sound harsh, might sound mercenary, might sound a lot of things, but what it actually sounds like is good advice. Do not work for free. You won't hear, "Hey, you're a painter and decorator. That's great. Will you paint my house? It'll be great exposure for you." Or, "Hey, you're a lawyer. That's great. I've got this case that needs doing. Would you do it for free? It'll be great exposure. I can't pay you, but it'll be great exposure." So why do people expect artists to work for free? Oh, that's right. It's because anyone can draw. Well, you know what? Anyone can paint. Anyone can represent themselves in court. Hell, anyone can saw off their own leg rather than go to a hospital. But you won't see people asking surgeons to work for free. And the same should be true of artists. Yes, anyone can draw, but not anyone can draw well. And the ones that can, we call artists. It's a profession like any other, and we expect as professionals to get paid. So when you're next asked to work for exposure, just remember, people can die of exposure. It's what happens when you can't afford to keep yourself warm. So here's what you should say to that kind of client. "Hey, you're a painter and decorator. That's great. Will you paint my house? It'll be great exposure for you." "No." "Oh, go on. I live right next to a road. Everyone will see your work. I'll tell my friends it'll be a great exposure." "Oh, lovely. So then I'll have lots more people who think I'll work for free." The answer's still no. Now don't kid yourself. People who ask you to work for exposure aren't the only ones out there trying to exploit you. Here's some translations of other common phrases you'll hear as a freelance artist that you should be wary of. "Hey guys, we're having an art competition." Translation: we want lots of people to submit design ideas, but we don't want to pay for them. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a fraction of the cost of getting all those designs and we're going to buy a cheap gimmick. Then we're going to use that as the prize in a competition to lure in as many people to send in as many designs as possible, and it will cost us very little. We're a professional company who's looking for a young artist to expand their portfolio. Translation: we're going to treat you as dirt for as long as possible. Occasionally we'll give you a small amount of money, and that's only there so that you'll keep coming back and we can exploit you more, but it will never be a true reflection of your value. "Hey, I saw you on a freelancing site and really liked your portfolio. Could you give me your email address? I'd like to email you about some design ideas. We need them quickly." Translation: those freelancing sites actually give you some protection from scammers, so we'd like to email you rather than talk through the site so that there's no record officially of what we want to actually ask you for. Then we'll exploit you as much as we can. And when you ask for payment, we'll disappear. So if you're not going to work for free, what can you do? It's simple. Get yourself a portfolio together and get yourself online. Get yourself onto free websites such as DeviantArt and get yourself noticed by building a portfolio there. Once you've got a portfolio, get yourself onto freelancing websites that allow you to set an hourly rate and charge something that you're actually worth, and clients will pay you to do work, and then everyone is happy. Just remember to price yourself properly. But what's the proper price? I'm glad you asked. You've got to remember to price yourself at an hourly rate. But how do you calculate that? Thankfully, it's actually quite simple. You take your monthly rent or mortgage costs and divide it by 30 to get a daily rate. Now, do the same with your monthly food, heating and gas, electricity, things like that, your telephone bill, your internet bill, and anything else that comes up on a monthly basis that you can't possibly live without. Divide those by 30 as well and add it to your housing cost. That is how much you have to earn per day in order to keep your head above water. But you're not going to be working 24 hours a day, are you? Most people would work maybe 8 hours. So let's take that daily rate and divide it by 8. That's your hourly rate. That's the hourly minimum that you have to earn in a working day in order to keep yourself going. But oh my goodness, we've forgotten to factor in the cost of art supplies. Now these things don't just pop out of thin air. You're going to have to pay for your supplies as well. But Zoe, you work digitally. Yes, that's very true. Digital people, you're going to have to take into account your costs too, because equipment doesn't come cheap. So whether you're working pen and pencil or digitally, it's all going to have to add up and you're going to have to factor all of that in. For example, graphics tablet and my art software, which happens to be Photoshop in my case. Now, that costs a fair bit. So Am I going to work as a kind of base rate of £10 an hour? Am I going to work for 60, perhaps even 65 hours just to pay for my supplies? That's a week's worth of work on my sort of schedule. I'm not going to work for nothing, for no real gain for myself for an entire week just to pay for all of that software, am I? That seems a bit harsh. Because that's what you're asking yourself to do if you don't factor in your costs. So, let's take your costs. Let's say you work digitally. You've got your graphics tablet and your copy of Photoshop or whatever you're using. You know the total price of that. So, you can say, well, perhaps my costs are 1 to 10% of that total for my hourly rate, and then I'll work it out that way and I'll see how long it takes me to pay it off. But I will pay it off, and it's not like I'm going to have to resupply myself. So, you can take that and say, right, I can add that to my hourly costs, and over this amount of time I will pay for what I've had to spend out. You can do the same with your art supplies. Let's say you've got a packet of Bristol board and it's a 24 pack. Well, you're only going to use one of those per comic that you're doing for your client. So you'll factor in the cost of 1/24th of what it costs to buy that. And that's your rate for that job. You're going to use a fraction of a couple of pencils, some ink, a bit of wear and tear on your brushes. So you'll factor in a small cost for all of those. That's what you have to add to your hourly rate to get your costs. It's fairly simple like that. So now you've got your housing, your gas, food, electricity and all of that, plus your art supplies costs. You put that in. That's your total hourly rate. But is that everything? What about bills that crop up out of nowhere, stuff that you didn't expect? What if your computer breaks and you have to repair it? Or your leg breaks and you have to go to hospital and you can't work for a little bit? Oh my goodness, what do you do then? Well, that's why your hourly rate isn't £2 an hour. You've got to factor in unthought of costs. So let's take your average thing. For example, if you look at all your expenses and you decide that you've got a £4 per hour cost rate, well, let's double that to cover the fact that you're going to need to put a little bit aside for wear and tear eventually on your computer or your lights, or something comes up, basically unexpected bills. So you double it. That's £8 an hour. That's not a bad rate. But you haven't factored in the fact that you're working for yourself, and you've got to pay yourself a little bit as well. You can't just work for costs. So you add in what you think your time is worth. And that is going to depend on how many clients you think you're going to get. For example, if you're really, really well in demand because your art is so fantastic, then you're probably not going to work for £10 an hour. But when you're just starting out and you want to build up a base of clients and you've never really worked before, £10 an hour is pretty good. You're getting yourself £2 of money that's straight in your pocket, and the rest goes into your business. That's what you are. You're a self-employed business when you're working as a freelancer. Once you start getting a few more clients in, you can start upping that to maybe £12 an hour, 15. Eventually, if you're lucky and successful, you can charge a bigger rate. But start small, see how you go, and work up from there. And that's really all you've got to know, because now you can have a look at those art competitions and other little scams and see, well, I've got this amount of work to do. If I want to put in an entry for that art competition, let's say it's going to take me about 5 hours to create my entry and make it good. Well, even at £10 now, that's £50. How much is that prize worth from this art competition? Oh my goodness, it's a £45 prize. Why don't I just work those 5 hours, get a little bit of money in my pocket, and still get that prize? That's how you've got to work it out. That's why these things are scams, because they're asking you to work for far less than you're worth. So don't do it. Work for what you're actually worth. And if you want to draw for free, do it for yourself. And use it to build up your portfolio. So it all comes back to you and keeps you going. Because let's face it, they're not going to look out for you. You've got to do it yourself. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I hope you did like this. If you did, remember to click the like button and share it with your friends so that they can see some good advice on going freelance as an artist. And do subscribe for future videos, because there will be more in the future. But until next time, I've been Kirk-Robinson. You've been watching the Non-Mouse Show, and I'll see you later.